All right, so let's take a look at a couple other things. If we log into the application and we go to our blog page and we go to create, or let's just update a blog. Notice down here we have the quality score, and it's not, it's read only, okay? And down here you could change out some of these scores, okay? And you could set these and then update, and it changes the score, okay? So let's look at that under create a blog. When you create the blog, what we're going to do is we're actually going to take this information and we're just going to store it. Now each of these just happens to be an int, okay? So if we look at the database and we go to our blog table and our structure, notice that these last 5, I added them and I just made them ints, okay? Just very easy. And also with quality score, okay? So we don't have to worry about making them decimals and all that stuff. And notice also I changed quality score to an int, okay? Now, if you do, that's the first thing I want to show you. If you also go in to your database and go to designer and you set this relationship up correctly, okay? Let me see if I can get it to delete, okay? I deleted the relationship. I'm going to go back into designer and show you that it's actually deleted, okay? All right, here's my designer. Now if I go to create a relationship and I go from blog over to blog, okay? And right here, if I set these to cascade, okay? What's going to happen is if I delete a blog, it's going to delete all the contracts automatically, okay? If I update a blog ID, it's going to update the blog ID automatically under contracts because of this relationship, okay? Now really that's the power of relational databases, especially with foreign key, primary key constraints. This doesn't show that relationship, but if you go back into designer, you'll notice that it's there, okay? And you'll notice that it's right because the small circle is on this side and the big circle is on this side. Okay, now let's take a look at some of the code. Okay, there's some tricky parts to the code, so let's take a look. Notice this is my project 1. Okay, under classes, under blog, notice how I added the other columns up here, the 5 columns here at the top. Okay, and notice also that I created a function. Notice it's a static public function. I call it qual score, and I added my 5 inputs. Okay, and notice here I just say if fq shop is not equal to 1, but is compared to 1. So essentially, if this has a 1 in it, if this fq shop memory location has a 1 in it, set this little variable fq to 10. And otherwise, it's going to be a 0. Okay. So to make this better, we could just say else fq equals 0, something like that. Now that will actually do the same thing. You don't technically have to put that else there, but let's just do that anyways, just to be good programmers. Okay, so now it's going to add them all up. So if it's got a 1 in it, set it to 10. Otherwise, let it be 0. Okay, so add them all up. We've already passed them in, and this is that quality score. Okay, so that was the one thing. Let's look at the contract class. I did a little bit of a function on the contract class also. Okay, on the contract class, because we are using blog ID and it's not the table name, I went ahead and copied the a function from the database object and brought it in and renamed it, and it's specific only to this contract class. So if we can create a find by SQL function, we can create it ourselves, and we can say, you know what? Let's find a contract where the blog ID is equal to whatever blog ID we pass in. Okay, So that was the two things in the classes that I made a change to. Okay, I added two functions, one in blog and one in contract. So now let's go ahead and look at the blog. On the index page for the blog, down in the actual table that's shown, notice I'm calling my blog ID. Okay, that's interesting. Notice that I am using contact first name and contact last name, but I'm only calling it contact name. Okay, so I'm just concatenating those two here. So it looks like it's actually one name, but really I have them stored separately. Okay, now if we go to create on the blog, we don't need to bring any variables over for the create for the blog. Okay, and then this is just a post request. But notice a couple things to notice. Input type, I'm using a number. I'm also using min and max. Okay, so it means the minimum amount that could be in there, the maximum amount that could be in there. Okay, notice on for my checkbox type, I do set a value of 1. Okay, so that was another one that was a little bit tricky. Other than that, also here it should have said index on the previous one, so you got to make sure that it posts back to itself. So hit create, change it to create instead of index. So those are the things that I changed. And then now let's look at the request. On post, what happens? It grabs everything from the form. It runs it through that qual score function that we built. That's where it sets the quality score here. We upload all the quality score stuff out to the new blog, and we call create. And when it gets done, we send it back to the header. Okay. Same thing with delete. Delete doesn't do anything different. It just grabs the blog ID and it deletes the blog ID, just like it normally would. Okay. And with update, it grabs the blog ID and then it uses that blog ID to go out and get the blog that we're trying to update. Okay. It grabs all the information about that blog. It puts all that information out so we can use the variables. And then notice here, this is a little bit tricky, on if the FQ shop is compared to 0, set it to unchecked. Otherwise, set FQ to checked. And then we'll use the FQ checked. We'll use this word checked down in the actual, in the checkbox. So here's the checkbox. At the very end, it doesn't have an attribute with an equal sign. It will just say checked. So what will happen is, and this is what will happen with the HTML. It says here's the input box, and it's checked. So what you need to do before that is you need to add a hidden line of FQ shop value of 0. Okay, so this is a hidden input. Okay, the same as this blog up here is also hidden. Okay, so it will grab this hidden one, but if it's checked, it will use this one. So this here and this here, both will be named the same. So you hide this one, set it to 0, but if it's checked, it's going to be 1. Okay, so essentially there are the two values, 0 and 1. You do the same thing for gferry and for mstar. Okay, I hope that makes sense. If not, we can explain that a little bit better. Okay, on the index page, notice when it goes to the detail page is what we're going to call it. So there's a detail here and here, detail. Okay, when it goes to the detail page, we actually use a relative link. So we're going to start with a ... It's going to come out of the blog folder and into the contract folder, and we're looking for this index page here. So it's ... contract, and we're going to pass it the blog ID because we're going to use that in the index for the next one. So in that index file, we're going to grab that blog ID, okay? And using that blog ID, we're going to go to the blog class and build our blog, okay? And from there, we're going to give some detail about the blog. Okay, so I just added some detail. When you go and look at the detail, what's the blog name, quality score, contact person, email, okay? And then we're going to load up our contract information. And that's what's going to go into our little table, Okay, so we start our table, we end our table, we have our table headers, and then right above it, we actually do our, we're going to say create. And I think it's create. Oh, this one, that's right. This is create a contract, but we need to pass into that contract the blog ID. Okay. So we can use that blog ID. Although, because it's create, okay, that's the foreign key. So we need to make sure on create, the foreign key does not get auto incremented, but we do need to make that relationship. Okay. So we have to pass it in the foreign key. Okay. So then down here, it's just update contract ID. That's very easy. And then it's just the same thing. You just go into update. The only thing that's different on this page is when you send it back, you want to send it back to the index page, but that's really the blog detail page. So you'll want to send it back to the index page, but you'll want to include this blog ID is equal to the blog ID variable. Okay. Now this will not work here unless you have it hidden as an input type. Okay. So you got to make sure and that's on all the pages that you're trying to pass this. So on create, you're passing it back to index with that also. Okay. So you got to make sure that you have that input as hidden here. And on delete, we also want to have it passed back to here. So again, you want to have that hidden value here. So you can use it, and you'll only be able to use it on post request if you grab it out of the post variable. Okay. You don't have to send it in here on the delete page. You don't have to send it in to be deleted, but you are going to have it available to use on your post request. Okay. And then on the report page, notice it's just HTML. So what I'll do here is I'll add some PHP, and I will come up with those queries on how I want to run them, and then I'll run those queries, and that will be part of your guys' project. Notice on even on this page, I require login. Okay, all the pages have it. Okay, they all have this require login. That's how the login page works. Okay.